What's going on, guys? Ches Critta. So the UN Small Arms Treaty sounds so friendly, doesn't it? I want to give you a couple opposing points of view on this and then sum up what I think about it. But first of all, just to let you know my bias, I think it's a terrible idea and horribly damaging, could be the linchpin to the Constitution as we know it. First of all, an article by Dick Morris here, and it's titled D-Day for Gun Control. Now, he basically states that it looks like, as it's planned right now, on the 27th of this month, Hillary Clinton, as the Secretary of State, will sign the Small Arms Trade Treaty. Now, this is extremely dangerous because it's not like a piece of legislation that, once enacted, can be repealed. Now, two things need to happen in order for this to go through. A, Hillary Clinton needs to sign it, and B, Congress needs to ratify it. Now, it's doubtful whether they will or not, but just the fact that we're having the debate should be scary enough, okay? Once Congress ratifies it, if they do, and again, we have a lame duck session coming up, so there might not be any reason for them not to if they just want to deal a death blow to this on the way out. If this happens, you can pretty much kiss the Second Amendment goodbye. And the reason for that is treaties take precedence over our domestic law here. In terms of the UN, it kind of becomes global law at that point, meaning that the Second Amendment is open to interpretation not just by our people here in the US, our Congress, our elected officials, but basically the global officials that are appointed from all over the world. Now, everyone is saying that is proponents of this that, oh, don't worry, it has nothing to do with the Second Amendment, it's about arms trafficking. Okay. Now, Dick Morris goes into this, and first of all, he points out some blatant things that people overlook that are proponents of this. And that's the fact that the United States, Russia, China, Germany, and Israel are the majority of arms trades, small arms trades around the world, okay? Not private individuals, but the states in general. So what this opens the door to is not outright gun confiscation, okay, but it opens the door to an international gun registry where every single firearm would need to be registered, and basically you are going to be in violation of international law if that isn't the case. Now, we know how these things go, okay, and I give this example. In California, they forced everyone to register SKS rifles, and they said, don't worry, we just want to know who has them, it's for your safety, right? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And shortly thereafter, they said, you know what, I know we said we were just going to register them, but we're going to need to confiscate those, and if you don't turn them in, now we know who has them, and you're going to be SOL and a felony, and we'll take away all your rights. So that was a big gun grab. Now, this is way more extensive than the assault weapons ban that went through, and the reason is, again, it cannot be overturned, okay? The implications for this is basically international law taking precedence over the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights, for that matter. Now, we know why the Second Amendment is in there and why it's the Second Amendment, not the Third, the Fourth, the Fifth, or the 10th. The reason is the Second Amendment defends the First Amendment. So once that goes, you can pretty much kiss all your freedoms goodbye, all your rights under the law. And to point out the absurdity of this, if you look at the United States stats, okay, and this is on homicides. In 1993, Dick Morris states, there were 24,350 homicides in the United States. Last year, there were 13,576, okay? Despite the fact that we have 60 million more people and only 9,000 of those involved a firearm, okay? Remember how the floodgates, when the assault weapons ban came off, it was supposed to be some nightmare, people were going to be gunned down left and right? Well, that's not the case at all. There's actually much fewer murders in terms of firearms. And the other thing that he points out here, and this is something I pointed out in the past and people jump all over me for it, which is it's less than 1/3 of highway deaths each year in this country, okay? And people argue with me and they say, well, cars are a useful tool, you know, firearms are not. Well, I beg to differ. If some asshole is breaking into your house in the middle of the night, a firearm is a very, very useful tool in defense of you, your family, and your property in those states that still allow it. So, under the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution, basically the ATT, which is the Small Arms Treaty, despite the Second Amendment, would have the force of constitutional law in the United States, meaning they would ride right alongside the Second Amendment. So we need basically 34 senators to step up to be able to make sure that this thing doesn't happen. I think we can get that amount. I think we can get that amount. The problem is we can't be complacent about it. I think that writing your congressperson, emailing them, emailing your state senators, hitting them up on this is really important. Remember how we got the internet thing shot down, the what was it, SOPA and PIPA or whatever. You know, when people became outraged, they backed off. Okay, so that's something that's really important. Now, the contrarian point of view, and I'll pull this up in a second here. This is a gentleman who is advocating in favor of the Small Arms Treaty, and I want to pick his argument apart a little bit. This is Bernd, yeah, I guess that's his name, de Boozman, and he says why the world needs the Small Arms Treaty. He starts it off, I think he destroys his argument right here, but he says, in the past 2 decades, experts monitoring the international arms trade recorded more than 500 violations of the United Nations arms embargo. Just 2 have resulted in trials and convictions. Okay, let's stop right here, folks. So, 500 violations of the international law, of the law that's already in place, and 2 convictions. Okay, this just shows you right here that, first of all, making this treaty is not going to stop the bad guys. You know who it's going to stop? The good guys, like it always does, okay? Illegal arms are all over the place, okay? The legal ones typically are not a problem. And then he goes on and he just says, this is why we need stricter control. Despite extensive searches, we couldn't find any more than 2 convictions. Well, whose fault is that? You know, I would say that that is the UN's fault. And he goes on and starts talking about countries that, and governments that don't have anything regulating firearms and all this. And I think that, I mean, you can read his article. It's mostly fluff if you want to. But my take on this is the fact that there's no way you will ever be able to destroy the Second Amendment from inside the United States. And I was talking to Corey C. about this. There's too many good old boys in Texas and Oklahoma and all these other places. They're never going to go along with this. And their leaders know that, and so the leaders are not going to vote against it, no matter what the lobby is or what the Brady campaign or any of these people do. But the fact that they're trying to go after this right now should send up red flags. I mean, it's funny, you see the stuff come and go, and it worries me because it's complacency and lack of apathy. You know, people are just apathetic. They just want to sit around and say, well, you know, I got to look out for me and mine, keep your nose down, yada yada. I mean, we've said that many times on this channel. But if you let stuff like this just go by, like remember all the other stuff that we were enraged about, the NDAA and all this stuff. Well, do you ever hear about it anymore? No, it's just an act of law. You know, it just is. And the Patriot Act. Remember how in the beginning people were like, yeah, Patriot Act. You know, we just got attacked. It was 9/11, and they enacted the Patriot Act. Well, now they're using this stuff against the American people in Patriot Act Part 2. And so, unfortunately, everyone gets all up in arms, but they push this stuff through anyways. And once they push it through, you know, you kind of let it slide because you still have the appearance of normalcy. Again, the normalcy bias. But the ultimate way to take power away from a population is to take away the ability to defend itself. So when I'm talking about this stuff, guys, I just want to make sure that you know, you understand that this is a huge deal. It's not getting a lot of media coverage, and it's basically anti-constitutional. Okay, the Bill of Rights, again, these are rights that are not supposed to be able to be taken away, and the Founding Fathers never foresaw a United Nations with the power that our current United Nations have. Now, the United States is a big portion of the United Nations. But again, it's going to come down to a lot of it is the voting bloc of the United Nations. And all these other countries that have already taken away arms from their people, there aren't many left, are going to vote on the side of, guess what? Abolishing and taking away arms. So we need to be noisy about this thing if we want to stand. Ultimately, I mean, I don't know, if let's say it becomes enacted and the worst case scenario happens and they try to do some sort of roundup, I don't think it's going to do anything other than spark a civil war. The scariest thing about this is if it becomes international law, it could become an international issue. Okay, and that's kind of the conspiracy, crazy, you know, aspect of things where you'd see the quote-unquote blue helmets, you know, roaming the streets of America. Well, if it's international law, you know, these countries where where they pass sanctions against the warlords that spring up and stuff like this. Who do they send in? They send in the UN. Okay, and it's no different here. It could very easily happen, and that's the thing. So I don't know, videos on it. I mean, I hope I'd see more of this in the mainstream media, but again, it looks like if you really want to get to the nitty gritty and get down to the bottom of things, you got to go online and do the research yourself. But this is a huge deal in closing, a huge deal. So be vocal about this one, guys. Anyone else that wants to make videos on this as a response or anything like that, I think we need to get the word out there, because again, it seems like another small step in the direction of tyranny, but every small step you give up, you get closer to that ultimate goal. And there's a lot of people that have that goal in mind, and they want to do it in your lifetime. So get ready.